We are back. The Can O' Corn podcast has returned. Season 2 underway. Parker Hageman here with me, as always, the man, the myth, the legend, Rob Allison. Rob, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for getting us back on.
You're looking well. You're looking dapper and fly, as the kids say.
um, I mean, fresh, clean. It's how I do things.
Obviously, we've spent a ton of time together here over the last calendar year, but the last time we did a show, we had Joey Oakie on. He was kind of previewing his high school season. Summer went pretty well for him because he ended up drafted by the Cleveland Guardians in the second round, if I'm not mistaken, or was it third round? Do you recall offhand?
Second or
third round.
Yeah.
So he had a pretty good summer. How was your summer?
Fun, busy, but definitely fun. Got to watch a lot of baseball, kind of crisscrossed here, there, and everywhere across the state. Was running out to Nebraska. Was obviously coming up to Minnesota to see you guys multiple times, and yeah, earning a lot of Casey's rewards points. The account's looking pretty good right now.
That brings up my first topic. Casey's spicy chicken sandwich or their pizza?
I'm really sick of their pizza, so I'm definitely going with the spicy chicken sandwich.
Yay.
My kids claim that it is a straight knockoff of Chick-fil-A. Like, they're fans, big fans. And I know someone else that might be on this podcast that is a gigantic fan of Casey's spicy chicken sandwiches.
It's definitely in my top 2 reasons to come to Iowa is to make sure I stop at Casey's to get the chicken sandwich. Yeah. But outside of the events in the Midwest, we're down in Georgia for an extended period of time at future games, junior future games, senior future games even. Just walk a little bit through of your thoughts on that week.
Yeah, I really liked how they changed the format to include the senior future games into that event. I mean, it obviously made our days longer, the week more arduous than what it already is, but that's fine. I think it definitely impacts and is helpful for guys up in our region just because we do have a lot of late developers, a lot of late bloomers. I mean, there's a significant number of guys on that senior future games team that were kind of the odd man looking out in future game selections the year before. They were up there in consideration. We had to make some really tough decisions. Obviously, you can't take everybody, but I think those guys stayed the course. They continued to improve, and they ended up leapfrogging some guys and getting a really good opportunity and being in a complex with well over 300 Division I coaches. But no, the whole week it was really good.
The fact that we're having a senior future games and that prep baseball is running that, it kind of dovetails into kind of our main topic for this episode, which is the new recruiting landscape of NCAA baseball. I think that we just saw that introduced, within that future game event. It should be becoming more prevalent as, more and more kids will still be available heading into their senior year. Let's just back up and talk a little bit about what we've learned about the new recruiting rules and where it's going from there. So just talking from an article from Baseball America, the previous scholarship numbers were 11.7 for every team, correct? Which is now moved to 34 scholarships, which in theory is a good thing, right? Except it would benefit more of the wealthier programs, correct? If that's the programs that have the kind of numbers and money that an SEC school would have, correct?
Yeah, I think there's two really clear things going on with this rule change. The first one being is yes, Division One schools will have the latitude to offer up to 34 full rides. That doesn't necessarily mean every Division One institution is going to fund their baseball program to allow them to actually do that. I've heard from a lot of schools, even Power Fives, where their school might budget 15 full rides. They might budget 18. They might budget 21, like whatever the number may be. Um, so I think that's something pretty big that a lot of coaching staffs and athletic department administrators, they're all trying to figure out what type of effort they're going to be able to put towards that and what it's all going to look like. Um, I think there was a lot of Power Fives that through their recruiting classes the last 3 years, if they do go to 34, I think they're going to have to make some really tough choices. Like there's going to be kids committed to schools that aren't going to be committed there anymore because maybe the school had kind of roster wise budgeted out that they were going to have 40 guys on campus or 45, or you even hear the urban legends of some heavy hitter schools bringing upwards of 50 or 60 guys onto campus in the fall. And so that's going to be really a tough go as well. I think to some of the schools that aren't going to be fully funded up to 34, I think they're trying to bridge the gap and really expand and build what they're trying to do from a NIL standpoint, to be able to bring in those additional dollars to try to get as many of the 34 as they can up to a full ride. Um, but you're obviously going to have you're going to have a certain percentage of schools at the top end. The school is going to budget them 34 full, and they're going to have a significant amount of NIL money on top of it. And I mean, there's going to be a small percentage of schools that legitimately they're going to operate like the New York Yankees. Like they're going to legitimately be able to outbid and outbuy any of their competitors in the accumulation of weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah, and I think we saw a little bit of that effect at the College World Series here this year, where everybody in the lineup, were transferred in for somewhere else, right? I mean, it's going to be a war, a big war on these guys to try to get the best that you can. And I think we talked about this in a couple of our car rides, that kids that are developing in smaller schools are now just going to get plucked away like the Yankees and become the farm system.
Yeah, and that's got to be really hard for. I look at it from my experience at junior college. We'd identify guys, we would evaluate guys, we would offer them scholarships, give them opportunities, and then ultimately, we would typically always lose at least like two or three guys over the course of the summer because they had good grades, they continued to develop. All of a sudden, a Division One had a need and a want, and we would get poached quite a bit every year. And I think that's what's happening to the small schools and the mid majors. They go they go out on a limb, they take a chance on a guy, they've evaluated him, they think he's a great fit for their program. He comes in, it all comes to fruition. He does exactly kind of what they dreamed about and were hoping that he could do for their program, and boom, he's gone. So that's a little bit of a tough road. Like that's me having my own personal opinions about it, having to go through it a lot back when I was coaching. Like that's for a lot of these smaller schools, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow.
I could tell you hate goodbyes. I know that's something that you don't like. But the other layer to this whole thing is that the roster size have shrunk, right? And we still don't know exactly when official rosters have to be in for this coming season. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think how it directly impacts high school guys is you're going to have two scenarios. And no one knows. The NCAA has not given a firm ruling, but no one knows when roster limits are going to be in effect. And I guess the example would be is you're going to have two sides. So one, like if it's the first day of school and that's your 34 and you have to live and die with that 34 the rest of the way through, I think that's going to significantly impact high school guys. Um, I think schools are going to have to go older. They're going to have to hedge their bet and go with college guys that have a significant track record. Like, they're not going to have the latitude to develop, guess, dream, hope that this 17, 18-year-old kid is going to come in and be an immediate contributor when they're making such a huge jump from high school to competitive Division One baseball. Um, Flip side, people have discussed and brought up that it could go out as far as you don't have to be compliant until right before the season starts in the spring. Um, I think if that ends up being the case, I think you are going to see an uptick in high school guys still getting recruited by Division Ones and getting opportunities, because you can go into the fall then with a maybe a more expansive roster, extra bodies, be able to take a chance on a few guys, give them that fall, give them that winter, how they acclimate themselves to the program. And yeah, some guys are going to have some opportunities to probably stick and help that team win. Um, so, for a high school player's sake, I hope it goes in the direction of a later compliance date to still give them some opportunities. If it does go to first day of school or somewhere early in the process, I think it's going to make it that much tougher for high school guys. But I think ultimately, and this isn't, I mean, the reality of all of it is every level of college baseball is going to get that much more competitive. There's going to be this huge trickle down effect. And ultimately, I guess I preach this a lot. Like, I think the correct mindset for kids is I want to work my butt off and I want to play at the highest level that I can possibly play at and get past and above and beyond the very centric, well, I'm just going to set a goal that I want to play Division One. Playing Division One at a Tennessee or an Arkansas or a TCU is a far different experience than playing at a really poor Division One school. Um, but you always hear, I want to go to D1. I want to go to D1. And I don't know. I don't know if it becomes a pride thing, a keeping up with the Jones thing. I think just a much healthier mindset is I want to be tested. I want to be iron sharpens iron. I want to play at the highest level I possibly can, and then see what happens. See where you stack up in the big scheme of things. But I know from the overall perspective, just everything is going to get so much more competitive. There's JUCOs are going to start getting log jammed. High end D2s are going to get log jammed. You're already seeing high end D2s getting log jammed. Um, you're going to have guys they're going to have to go to D3. They're going to have to go to NAIA. They're going to have, but it's going to become even that more competitive to get. Really, it boils down to I just want an opportunity to play college baseball, because roster spots, regardless of the level, it's going to become that much more competitive for guys to get their foot in the door and get that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think, if you're speaking directly to a parent or a family that has maybe had an older sibling, a couple years older, that had committed to D1 in eighth grade, or had a neighbor that committed to D1 in eighth grade, the world's different for the kid who's coming up now as an incoming freshman, right? So the timeline's going to be pushed back a little bit based on the rules, but walk us through a little bit of what that new scenario looks like for that kid who's coming into say he's doing a Rising Stars event and wants to become, the next Division One kid. What's the timeline look for him?
I think, to come in eighth grade and ninth grade, I really think you're just trying to stack yourself up and solidify kind of where you're at in the big scheme of things. I think the biggest value, especially for eighth and ninth graders to come to an event, is just to set a baseline and see where you're at. Like, I think there's tons of positive reinforcement. I think there's tons of negative reinforcement which can still be a positive. Um, just because you hit in the 3 hole for your U trip team and you got a bunch of sweet MVP bag tags, and like that tells people nothing. That tells people nothing. Like, find out where you stack up amongst your peers from a data perspective, see where your strengths are, see where your weaknesses are, see what you really should be putting a ton of your time and probably finances into in development, like continuing to improve as a baseball player overall. Like, the blind chase of the average everyday eighth grader going to showcases for exposure just isn't a real thing. It's not a real thing anymore. Um, but I think as they do gravitate, I think the sophomore year becomes really, really impactful. I think now you really are trying to solidify your standing and kind of where you stack up, either from a state perspective or a regional perspective, maybe a national perspective. Because I think when you get to August 1st, right before your junior year, if you aren't identified, if you aren't on schools' radars, August 1st, when those floodgates open, if you're the odd man looking in, like, you have a pretty tough road to try to get your foot in the door and position yourself amongst all those guys nationally to have a chance to get recruited in the first place. And then as you just progress through, I think we're going to start as soon as they finalize all the rules and the details and all the changes at Division 1 and rosters. I do think we're going to see an uptick in high school kids committing to Division 1s. I just think right now a lot of people are almost in this paralysis by analysis. Like, they don't know exactly what's going to go on. They don't want to overcommit to kids and families. Um, everyone's just kind of in this wait and see. Let everything come to fruition, and then we'll know what direction we need to go. Um, and the bottom line is, some people have these asinine comments like, "School X is done recruiting 2026s or fives or whatever the grad year." Like, okay, on September whatever, on that day, it might not be a priority for them, but a couple injuries, a couple guys go down for whatever reason. I mean, any extenuating circumstance, no one's going to cut off their nose to spite their face. If a guy is good enough and he can come in and help them win, they will, even if they have to pull out a magic calculator to figure out the finances and the roster spot and everything else. Like, if there's good guys to be had, people will get them.
No,
I
we
mean, there's
said
no
we're
doubt.
done, so we're just done. We're not. No, get away. We're done. No, they're
Yeah, we're
not doing
never
that.
going to revisit it. We're
Yeah.
gonna we're gonna dig a 6 foot hole on that grad class, throw them
Uh,
in, bury them. Like, no, no.
now,
It's just they have priorities change. I don't know how many times, like this time of year, schools will be like, we would not touch a catcher with a 10-foot pole. Like, we're saturated at that position. Like, I know this actually happened at the University of Iowa last year in like January workouts. They had 3 catchers go down in the span of 2 days with injuries. And they legitimately were like trying to teach guys on their roster on the fly how to catch because they were like in a really bad spot. Um, but I've had tons of schools, they won't, no interest in a position in the fall. And then they get to May, early June, after they've had a chance to kind of revisit how the season went, how everyone performed individually. And all of a sudden, all they want is best available. Who's the best available catcher? Like, we just need him to have equipment when he shows up. Like, they have all these boxes that need to get checked in the fall, and really they just simplify it and they just want the best guy who can play the position. And there's a lot of kids that get opportunities late. So
you kind of touched upon it within this last answer, but I want to get your thought on this because we've talked about this where this past future game, which ended at the end of July and then August 1st starts, and you usually start seeing a ton of commitments right after that. And I've gone down to 3 years now, I think, future games, and there seems to be like a big spigot that opens up, and the minute that starts, you get all these commitments. It feels like this year is a lot slower, and I'm sure there's data somewhere where you could actually confirm this. But do you have the same feeling that, and part of like what you're saying is maybe people holding off, but there just seems to be less of the commitments right away after that?
Yeah, it seems like it has been a little slower. I think it points to a lot of Division Ones trying to get some finality, and for the NCAA to give them the timelines that they're going to be working with. Um, I think there's a lot of kids still doing their shopping. Um, you could say it's not that they're not getting recruited. I think players to some degree could be slow playing the process as well because they're starting to see how these rosters are forming and the transfer portal. And even though I'm getting recruited by these three Division Ones, are they going to make a serious commitment to me as a high school guy coming in, or am I going to come in immediately second fiddle to the guy that they grab out of the portal that's 21, 22 years old? So I think there's definitely more considerations, more shopping, more conversations, and not everyone just because before it was the Wild West. Like everyone legitimately was just shooting from the hip. You got a Division 1 offer, boom, you took it. And so I think there's a lot more processes going on behind the scenes for sure.
I'll say one school in our upper Midwest universe seems to be going the other way is Nebraska out of everything. From what we've seen within our collection of players, I mean, I think they're like 80% of the kids that we had under our umbrella are committing to Nebraska on all the D1s. I guess that's one way to go. Is like, hey, if everybody else is zigging, you zag, right, and try to get ahead of it.
Yeah, they definitely have been motivated. They've been aggressive in continuing to recruit high school guys, and I don't know. I think the mentality a little bit is bird in the hand versus two in the bush. Like you could sit there and say, hey, if we wait it out, start seeing who hits the transfer portal, that could be your two in the bush. Or if you see a really talented guy that you feel strongly that he can come in and be a contributor to your program, you could get the bird in hand right now and grab that high school guy and still be equally as successful.
So if you had to synthesize all these rules together and say this is going to benefit this group the most, whether it's players, schools, blah blah blah, who comes out on top out of everything? I know it's a tough one.
For student athletes, they have the opportunity to go to college to get a college degree and lessen the burden on their families. Have the opportunity of possibly being able to go to school for free, if not actually make money going to college and playing baseball. Like, I think that's a win. I think for the overall health of Division 1 baseball, I don't know if it's the greatest thing. I think you're going to have this portion of schools that are going to be in the haves, and you're going to have a larger portion of schools that are going to be in the have-nots. You and I have discussed it, and it's me just espionage theory. I wouldn't be surprised at some point if baseball doesn't go the same route as football, and ultimately there could end up being Division 1, and there could be end up being one double A. Just really to try to make everything more competitive, but making it more competitive with colleges on an even playing field. Because right now it's not. Like Division 1 baseball, every school is not on an even playing field with budgets and finances and attracting talent. and it's not the best.
Maybe this is the naive optimist in me, but I do think the players now have more power and control over where they can go, depending on how much work they can put in. They have more options. Obviously, you might not, like you're saying, you might not get that D1 offer right away, but the fact that you can go out and crush an NAIA and D3 and get seen in a portal and move on gives you a lot more options than 10 years ago would have. So, but you're right. I think from the D1 programs, yeah, you start to see a little bit of a split in that way.
Yeah, and I think there is that glimmer of hope. I don't know, how do I want to phrase this? Like, I think a majority of kids, obviously, they set the goal. I want to go to Division 1, and then they just kind of, if they had to go to another level, there's almost like this. They resign themselves. Well, I guess I want to keep playing baseball. Um, I guess I'll go there. I'm not happy about it. Like, regardless now, like wherever they go, like I think it should go out the window. Like people that turn their nose up at various levels of college baseball, that level's not good enough for me. I'm better than that. Like that's old. Like that's old. Like there's been two or three circumstances through 10 years where I've been talking to a player, and what ends up coming out of it is I'm like, do you want to play college baseball? Yeah, for sure. If a Division 1 offers me, I for sure am going to go play. I'm like, well, what if a Division 1 doesn't work out? Yeah, then I'm not interested in playing college baseball. Like that was just mind blowing having those conversations. But I think if players like baseball, if they have the desire to play baseball, every level is going to get significantly better. I think any and all opportunities to continue playing college baseball is a good opportunity, and kids just need to work their butt off, take full advantage of it, and play as long as they possibly can. Because we know at some point, like all of us, we're only going to play so long, and then you move on with the rest of your life. So, really look at any opportunity as a great opportunity. And like you said, there can still be options, there can still be opportunities, things can move in a ton of different directions. There's a huge difference in a 20, 21-year-old guy versus a 17, 18-year-old kid. And just stay the course, bet on yourself, do what you need to do to continue to get better. And ultimately, I think guys ultimately they get what they deserve. So
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. I think in two when you're done with your college career, you can come work with us at the Norwalk Sports Complex and set up 60s and throw BP, and yeah, we'll take you.
I will work them into the dirt or the turf, depending on the complex.
Yes, yes. All right. Final question for this episode, Rob.
Okay.
What shows are you recommending right now?
Mm, I on Netflix. I really like the show Warrior.
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 Give us the 1 minute rundown.
The premise. You want the premise?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The premise. Uh, Late 1800s, San Francisco. Heavy Asian immigration to that part of the country. A lot of fighting. A lot of getting after it. Fire.
Action based.
Warrior is fire.
All right. Well, there you have it. Well, that was us on the new recruiting rules and a little bit of Casey's and a little bit of what you should watch this weekend. I'm Parker Hageman. He's Rob Allison. Talk to you next time.
Thanks.